Everyone. Good evening, everyone. I would like to call Silicon Valley Clean Energy Board of Directors meeting to order. It's a little early for us today. It's 5:34, and today is October 9th. Andra, can we please start with roll call?
Yes, thank you. Participating in person today, we have Director Scozola.
Here.
Mohan.
Here.
Mekachuk.
Present.
Chair Walia.
Here.
Vice Chair Tyson.
Here.
Director Rennie.
Here.
Klein.
Here.
Daly.
Here.
Thank you. I will note that we do have a quorum.
Thank you. This is time for public comment on matters not listed on the agenda. Do we have any members of the public? Seeing none, let's move on to the closed session items. We have 3 items tonight. The first one is public employee performance evaluation for the Chief Executive Officer, Monica Padilla. The second is a conference with legal counsel on existing litigation. And the third is also a conference with legal counsel on, this one is for an anticipated litigation. And let's start with public comment on any of the closed session items. Seeing none, okay, let's move into closed session and then we will come back after some time. Welcome back. It's 6:46 and the board had a closed session on multiple items as I announced earlier, and there is nothing to report on any of the 3 items. With that, let's move forward with our regular agenda. And the first is consent calendar. Do we have any public comment on consent items?
No hands raised, Chair.
Thank you. Any item that anybody would like to pull? If not, I'll entertain a motion. Go ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Moved by Director Mekachuk, and second? Second. Second by Director Lee. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None? Abstain? None? This is lovely. We can do a quick vote. So approved unanimously?
Yes, and I'll let you know when one of our remote attendees joins.
Thank you, Andrea. Okay, with that, let's move to the non-consent regular calendar tonight. And we'll start with the CEO's report. And we have our CEO, Monica Padilla, who is going to give us the report, starting with new employee introductions, I believe.
Good evening, Chair and Directors. Nice to be here again with you tonight. So last month, we talked about in the CEO report a new employee that we added to the team via our Climate Corps Fellow Program, a fellow by the name of Santosh Muralidharan. And so he wasn't able to come in person last month, but he is here tonight and would like to address the board.
Come on up, Santosh. Yeah, please go ahead.
And correct my pronunciation.
Make sure your microphone is on.
Testing.
Yeah,
Testing.
great.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Hello everyone. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Santosh. I just joined in September, right after Labor Day, as a Climate Corps Fellow at Silicon Valley Clean Energy. And my main task is to help implement our EV rebate program as well as design our new e-bike rebate program, which is super exciting, and I'm very glad to be a part of this. I grew up in Cupertino. I was born and raised here, so I moved a bit in college and right after, but it's nice to be back and be a part of the clean energy transition in my hometown and the Silicon Valley as a whole. So thank you all.
Wonderful. Welcome, Santosh, and that's quite something to be back in your hometown.
For sure, yeah.
That's great. Monica, back to you.
Okay. So the next employee that I'm happy to introduce to the board is Nalini Pillai. She is joining SVCE as a deputy board clerk administrative assistant. She actually started late last month as well. So you'll see quite a bit of Nalini as she's going to be working very closely with Andrea to support her on all the board-related activities. We're very excited to have her and the experience she brings to this role. So Nalini would like to address the board as well.
Good evening, Chair and Board of Directors. My name is Dalini Pillay. I am taking on the role of Deputy Board Clerk, Administrative Assistant. In my new role at SVCE, I will be working closely with our Board Clerk, Andrea Pisano, on future board meetings and committee meetings. Prior to joining SVCE, I served as Deputy Board Clerk on the Boards and Commissions team for Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors. My public service background is diverse in that I have worked with elected officials, appointed commissioners, and local government agencies. My interests include travel, historical architecture, and the arts, as well as outdoor activities and spending time with my family. I look forward to working with you all and look forward to my new role at Silicon Valley Clean Energy. Thank you.
Thank you and welcome, Nalini.
Yeah, one of the other things that Nalini is going to be doing is actually being in the office almost every day. So she's a presence there, and she's since she started, she's answering many customer questions. She didn't expect that, but she's already making improvements to that as well. So we're very excited to have her. So in addition to the personnel updates, there are a few other things in the CEO report. If there's anything in particular you'd like me to focus on, please ask. The only other thing I'd highlight for you is that we are going through some reorganizations or realignments internally, all to better serve our customers, to help us align with our mission, and to better serve all of our stakeholders, including you as the board. So if you have any questions, happy to answer them, but otherwise I will go on to the next item.
Thank you, Monica. Any questions for Monica from the board? No? Let's move on to item number 3, which is to approve an allocation of $100,000 from the operating budget for the proposed 2024-2025 expanded education fund. And we are going to have Juliet Pasquale, our community outreach specialist, making the presentation.
Maybe just before she starts, I had a question from one of the board members as to why we were bringing this to the board, since it's $100,000, which basically is my spending authority. And I said that is true, but these are the types of programs that we really do want to share with the board and with the public, because they really highlight the importance of SVCE and what we do in the community. So for that reason, and the fact that at $100,000, it's debatable whether that's my authority or not, whether I have to come here. But anyway, I'm happy to have Juliet present to you on this really cool program.
All right, good evening, everyone.
Mike.
All right, third time's a charm. Okay. My name is Juliet Pasquale, so happy to be here tonight to present the Expanded Education Fund. I'm a community outreach specialist on the marketing and communications team. And this is review material for those of you on the executive committee, but we'll get right down to business and get into why we want to approve funding for this. So next slide, thank you. So again, we're asking for $100,000 to be allocated for the Expanded Education Fund, and that's the action item tonight. Next slide, please. So to run through the objectives, we are going to go through the background from our existing initiatives and get into what we were asking for, so details for the Expanded Education Fund. And we're going to introduce another idea that we thought up after doing an education analysis of our service territory, so the Community College Partnership Pilot. And then we will have question and discussion time at the end. So starting off with background and the history of SVCE engaging with schools. We started in 2019 with the Education Fund, and this I want to highlight is really for individual student-led projects, and that came from just passion projects from students who wanted to compete in local, state, national competitions, and we started a program to apply for funding for projects like that. And in 2023, we really saw an increased demand for SVCE to expand our role in youth education initiatives. And, as the community outreach specialist, I heard through a lot of events, talking to students, parents, and of course, from our board of directors as representatives of the community, hearing from you all about just the increased interest and desire for these types of youth education programs. So this last year, we have worked on an education landscape analysis to help identify what role SVCE can play in the youth education space, climate, clean energy education, and what we can do there. And I do want to highlight that this was really born out of a fellowship project. So our previous Climate Corps fellow, Julie Miller, was really key in leading this entire project. And this is just a success snapshot of the Education Fund. So I highly encourage all of you to check out our website for the Education Fund. We highlight all of the projects and everything, all the work that they've done, but you can see by the numbers the impact that we have had through this program. So to get in deeper to the education landscape analysis and what we looked at there, you can see SVCE's role has really been on the student side of things, individual student side of things. So the scholarship competition that we host every spring, the existing education fund, again, individual student-led projects, and that's been the bulk of our youth initiatives. And you can see on the other side, just the way that the county has been involved in some other initiatives through the Office of Education, and then the climate initiative is through the County Office of Sustainability. We've also talked to various nonprofits in this space about education and what their work is here, as well as learning from our fellow Bay Area CCAs on what they've done to develop partnerships for youth education. So through our educational analysis, we identified two gaps and opportunity areas that I'll talk about tonight. So engagement with community colleges and enhancement of education nonprofits, and really investing in the work that's already being done in our county and seeing where we could put our resources there. So that really gets into what the Expanded Education Fund is. This is a competitive grant opportunity for nonprofits working with schools to expand their reach in the SVCE service territory and enhance climate and clean energy curriculum. And this is really a comparison of what we already do and what we plan to do with the Expanded Education Fund. So again, individual student-led projects for what we already do, and really expanding that to nonprofits that can have a wider reach than our programs that serve individuals. And I also want to highlight the target audience that is listed on the right, where we do want to prioritize proposals that serve underrepresented communities and Title I schools. As far as potential impact areas and budget, we expect to allocate about $20,000 per nonprofit. And below are the three major areas that we are looking for proposals. So early workforce development, green career pathways for these students, community workshops, which are hands-on opportunities for students to get involved with clean energy and climate concepts, and curriculum and educator training. So really getting staff, teachers, administrators trained in this area. Next steps for the Expanded Education Fund. We hope to finalize the development, application, guidelines and other materials this fall, and then launch later this year. And hopefully we will have initiatives to update you all on by 2025. And for the community college partnership, again, I want to reiterate that this is really a kickoff conversation of how we can expand our relationship, partnership with community colleges in our territory. So this is a representation of where we are already operating with the Education Fund, other initiatives, elementary through high school is represented very well. And then what we identified in our education analysis is that there's an opportunity to partner with our local community colleges and other higher education institutions. And there's really a workforce focus on these partnerships and exposing community college students to, again, what we do as SVCE, clean energy careers, and just making that relationship between us as staff and mentors and to these local students. So those bullets indicate, how this partnership could work, but we are developing what this would look like and have identified interested staff. So I am back to our action item for tonight. Again, reiterating that we are asking for $100,000 for the Expanded Education Fund, and that is the action item there. And with the Community Colleges Partnership, again, that's an introduction to what we hope to do. And with that, I will leave it open to questions.
Juliet, thank you so much. Fabulous program, and just one word to say it, excellent all around. Questions, Director Mekchek, then Director Scozola.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. And this is very exciting to move forward and reach students, because I think they have a tremendous amount of influence. And I'm just curious, how many students do you expect to touch, if you will, or be involved in this program, in the expanded program?
Yeah, that's a great question. That'll really depend on the types of proposals that we get. You can have something where we're working with a school or a nonprofit that can take a whole school grade level to a field trip opportunity, or it could be a school assembly at a local school. So it will really depend on what we solicit through that process. I'll have to think more on specific numbers, but it could look like any of those opportunities.
Okay, thanks. I'll just say I'll be supporting this, so.
Thank you.
Director
Thank you.
Scozola.
Yeah, so as Director Mekachek just mentioned, the youth play such a key role in educating their own parents. So by us educating the youth, they educate their own parents. The parents have the dollars to actually maybe invest in some of these amazing new technologies and electrification of their homes. This has been mentioned by many board members before, how key it is for these education programs to just spread the knowledge and end up getting our goals done in the end. So I did have one question. When it comes to parents, do we have any programs currently where we are educating the kids, but maybe there can be something maybe at their own schools where it's actively kind of like back to school night kind of a thing, but it could be more about conservation and all of our collective goals, where you actively involve the parents, it's the students, and perhaps they're giving presentations, kind of like a science fair type of thing. Like, do we have programs? I know we have things that are maybe similar to that, but is there anything that really pulls the parents in, so that we can have that conversation happen in the moment in the schools?
I did expect good feedback from you. I understand that you're an educator yourself.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. So I am not aware of any programs that currently exist, and we don't have an existing program within SVCE. So that could definitely be a project area where like the hands-on workshops involve both the students and the parents as well.
That would be fantastic. Great.
Thank you. Vice Chair Tyson.
Thank you for the presentation, Juliet. It sounds very interesting, and I really like the direction of going to the community colleges, even if it includes Stanford, which is sort of a community college, you could say. But no, it's a junior college. My real question is, you started off by talking about in the service area, and I'm just wondering, is there a bit of flexibility? I know Cupertino schools, for example, cover a little San Jose and a little Santa Clara, and so if it's something that's not entirely in our service area, we'd go with it. I would kind of hope so.
That's how we currently operate with the existing education fund, and if the student is from our service territory, or if they attend a school within our service territory, that's either are eligible for participating in that. So this could be done in a similar way.
Okay, thank you.
Director Klein? No, Director Lee?
Thank you, Chirwalia. Yeah, I'm extremely excited by this new program proposal. I just want to say thank you for our awesome staff as SVCE to bring this forward, and thank you for the members of the executive committee for bringing this forward. And my only comment is that if this were wildly successful, then we should probably provide a larger grant amount beyond only $100,000 in the future. We all know how crucial for our future workforce development is in the clean energy industry. The youth have the passion, understanding, and the drive that will help us address the urgent climate crisis we are facing, not just to mention what's going on in the East Coast and Florida that we're seeing right now. Harnessing the passion and motivation and helping them learn more about climate change and clean energy careers early on, in this case we talk about middle schools, being made them available in the future will have a tremendously beneficial impact on our world. Although there are existing organizations trying to do this curriculum in the workforce development, we know that funding has been very limited. This program will help with lowering that barrier and allow these nonprofits to keep doing this essential work. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So thank you for, Director Lee, thank you for echoing the excitement that the executive committee had on this item. We were super excited about it when we talked about it some weeks ago. And I have always talked about the youth, the nonprofits, and bringing the community colleges here. And I know West Valley Community College, West Valley Mission Community College District, thanks to Assemblymember Berman's latest bill that got signed into law, that is now free tuition for the students. I was there, I think, 10 days ago for that announcement at the college. And to have something like this teed up with the community college will be just fabulous, because they are just like other community colleges. I'm more familiar with that because that's in my city. Community colleges are moving forward in expanding, educating the future workforce for the future needs. And of course, climate change is a big deal. So to have SVCE engaged there as well, not just the school kids till the high school K to 12, is getting into when we are laying the foundation of that education, is what I'm trying to say, at the early stage in the community college. And this is just fabulous, very exciting. Any other thoughts, questions? If not, open public comment. And I know Director Hilton has joined us online. No
hands raised, Chair, online.
No public comment, so I close public comment, bring it back to the board. And Director Makachek, do I see you eager to make a motion?
Very eager to make a motion for item 3 on the agenda to approve an allocation of $100,000.
Second.
Okay. I saw Mayor Mohan and I heard Director Scazola. Everyone wants to. Okay, so you'll have to take the roll call on this.
Yes, thank you. Chair Walia?
Aye.
Vice Chair Tyson?
Yes.
Director Scozola?
Aye.
Mohan?
Aye.
Daly?
Aye.
Rennie?
Aye.
Makachuk?
Aye.
Klein?
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
Hilton? Aye. Thank you. That motion carries.
Wonderful. With that, we move on to item number 4.
Chair Wally? For item number 4, I am recusing myself from this agenda item because I've received campaign contributions from the CEO of the parent company of this project. While I understand that I may be able to participate under the law because the contributions were more than 12 months old, I elect to recuse myself to avoid any appearance of conflict of interest in our decision. Thank you, and now we'll have to exit the room.
Okay, while he's exiting the room, I'll only read the title of this item, which is to authorize the Chief Executive Officer to execute a 10-year power purchase agreement with VCI Energy for Glossy Garlic Solar plus storage. And our power resource manager, Britta Bradshaw, will be making the presentation. Okay, we're good. He's left the room.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
All right. Good evening. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to present this to you. So I am asking the board tonight to authorize the CEO to execute a 10-year power purchase agreement with VCI Energy.
I'm trying to erase it. I don't know why it's there.
So again, asking for you to authorize the CEO to execute the Glossy Garlic Agreement for the procurement of renewable solar energy and energy storage. I'll also put a spoiler in here up front that this is in our service area, hence the very fun name of Glossy Garlic. It's right outside Gilroy. So this is a 50 megawatt solar facility and a 50 megawatt 4-hour lithium ion battery. It would be I think about 192,000 megawatt hours per year of RPS solar energy. It's PCC1, Portfolio Content Category 1, from the solar component, and the battery would be 4-hour lithium ion battery, so 200 megawatt hours battery. It's a 10-year PPA with expected commercial operation date on February 28th, 2029. So that would go 10 years from there, and the total amount not to exceed $138 million. Oh, thank you. So just a quick review of the long-term PPAs we've signed to date. We've signed $3.7 billion in executed PPAs so far. That's 21 PPAs, about 1,500 megawatts of nameplate capacity. 9 of those projects are already online and operating at about a 39% RPS in 2024. And we're looking at a likely RPS position of 71% in 2030. Some background on this PPA. This came out of a request for proposals that we launched in October 2023. We shortlisted this project coming out of that RFP, which was looking for RPS eligible resources, resources that could help meet our greenhouse gas reduction plans, looking for resources that could meet the midterm reliability procurement order. This one, unfortunately, is not within the right time frame for that. Looking for more portfolio diversity, resource adequacy, and looking generally at contracts of at least 10 years. So we shortlisted the project in early 2024, and we've been in negotiations. And after, if we get board approval tonight, we expect to execute the agreement between now and November. A little more background on this project. Again, it would be our first local utility scale project. It's in unincorporated Santa Clara County, right outside Gilroy. It would meet 4% of our annual retail sales, which also means about a 4% addition to our RPS percentage. It helps us meet our greenhouse gas reduction target. It helps us meet our agency and state RPS targets, which also require us to have a certain percent of our contracts from long-term contracts. And it also provides resource adequacy from a clean source. The developer is named VCI Energy. They're a new company that is looking to get into the energy industry more, with more of a background in real estate in Silicon Valley. I think I've covered most of what's on here, but the contract structure would have a fixed price for resource adequacy as well as a fixed price per megawatt hour for the metered energy. Just a quick look at how this resource would help our overall RPS progress. We do start to have some need for additional clean and RPS resources in the early 2030s. And so this project coming online in 2029 would layer in and start to help us meet some of those RPS requirements, as well as overall meeting our clean energy targets. Looking at our compliance with the long-term RPS procurement mandate, because the project comes online in 2029, we're looking at its contributions towards the RPS compliance period 6 in 2028 to 2030. Again, it would add about 4% to our RPS position, and would come from a long-term target, which would help with the Senate Bill 350 requirement that 65% of our RPS is from long-term contracts. Looking at our energy and reliability portfolio, the solar would provide energy, about 4% of our load, and the battery would provide resource adequacy, about 4% of our need there. And so it would add additional energy and clean capacity to our portfolio. The contract structure or the project structure as a solar plus storage co-located facility is one that's really valuable under the new RA slice of day paradigm, where we need to meet hourly obligations. And so having the storage to charge from the solar and discharge in hours where we need it more is really helpful towards that. Just a quick note on the project risk. Any PPA we sign does have risk, both development risk or the risk of whether the project comes online, or performance risk once the project is online. We are working to address, or we have worked to address this risk through our contract provisions, our contract controls for the risks to a significant degree, as well as generally our proper portfolio oversight and diversifying our technology and our contracts, the locations and tenure and counterparties. As far as the development risk, VCI has site control for this project, which really helps towards that end, and they have the permitting process in progress. The interconnection study with the Cal ISO hasn't started yet. It's part of a kind of unique new process that the CAISO is going through, and so we'll have a lot more clarity on that within the next year or two. And there are always supply chain, labor costs, and financing risks. And once the project is online, there's a risk of whether it performs, whether it's solar is generating, and we're getting the RA value we expect. So in summary, Glossy Garlic adds a local project to our portfolio while meeting our clean objectives, meets the clean energy goals, adds clean capacity, and it's a positive net portfolio value. And just reiterating the request, we are asking the board to authorize the CEO to execute the Glossy Garlic Solar and Storage Agreement.
Thank you, Britta. It truly is nice to see there's a project coming up right in our county. So that's great. Okay, questions? Vice Chair and then Director Rennie.
Thank you for the presentation. You know, I understand, according to SB 350, that we have a 10-year minimum in terms of a contract to qualify. But as the technology becomes more mature, and I look at that cliff that I think is on slide 6, what keeps us from going for a 15 or 20 or 50-year contract so to buy us more of that, or do we find we're at a point of diminishing returns in terms of balancing the risk and what people are willing to commit to?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good to have a variety of project terms. I think to some extent, a longer term could be seen as riskier in case potentially contract prices for that kind of technology fall dramatically and we're trapped in a contract that no longer is appealing. I think there may be opportunity when this contract is nearing retirement. There could be opportunity for us to renew it or someone else to renew it, but I think in general it's good just to have a diversity of tenures.
Thank you.
Director Rennie, and then Director Mohan.
Yeah, sorry, I can't seem to figure this out, and I think I'm missing something. You mentioned portfolio diversity, and one of them is technology, and you used it in your summary, and I'm struggling to figure out how this is new diverse technology by just adding lithium batteries and solar. What am I missing here?
Yeah, admittedly, we'd like to see some different technologies. We didn't get in this previous RFO, we really didn't get any technologies that were particularly of interest to us. So yeah, perhaps it's not the best diversity. We don't have very many solar plus storage co-located agreements. So I do think it's interesting from that perspective, but.
Okay, so I didn't really miss anything. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Rob. Director Mohan, and then Director Scazola.
So in your slide, this contract is for $138 million, is what you said, over a period of 10 years.
Yes.
Right? And how is that payment made, and what is it that you're looking for in year one?
We expect the payments to be very similar each year. So it's a payment for the capacity, which is dollars per kilowatt month, and that's for the battery, and then a payment for the megawatt hours delivered from the solar.
Except this project hasn't started up, right?
Yes.
And I spoke with Monica this afternoon. It's going to take a while to sort of get on its feet. And so then what are we seeing before we actually see anything?
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So when we get board authority to sign these contracts, we have to specify how much we anticipate spending once the project comes online. Until the project comes online in 2029, we will not be making any payments to the project or to the developer. But they need to have assurances that we have the authority to enter into the contract so they can go pursue financing if they need to get financing or anything else for the project development.
Okay, so right now then we are not making any payments.
No, we won't make payments till the project comes online.
Okay,
That's
that
the
was my
case
question.
for all of our contracts, yeah.
Thank you.
Till we start getting electricity, basically.
Yep.
Yeah. Director Scazola.
Thank you.
Just building off of what Director Rennie's question was, is the new technology perhaps, I see the photographs, I love these photographs, by the way, of the agrovoltaic technology. Is that what makes it different, perhaps, where it's like, hey, we're growing crops right underneath these solar panels? Does that have anything to do with it? Is that?
I think it's really exciting technology.
I love it. I mean, whoever took these pictures, by the way, this looks like the future to me. Like, I think these pictures show the future more than many others I've ever seen. I'm like, what is this, Star Trek that I'm looking at here? I love it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't know if Director Hilton has access to the pictures because we put
Oh,
them
yes,
at
please,
place.
if you do.
But, yeah, we'll share them with you. The technology, just to be clear, is solar plus storage. So
Right,
the
but-
technology
but I'm
itself
just-
is not new.
Right, no, but I'm just wondering if it's like, well, is this kind of a new concept where it's like, yes, you have the actual tech there, but but we're doing farming as well. And so it's like, yes, like obviously growing bean sprouts is not new technology. It has anything to do with the solar, but I was just purely curious if that's the element that makes this different from like most projects, because most solar projects I'm aware of, they're usually just kind of sat out on the dirt in the middle of a desert somewhere, whereas this is like, what a beautiful new utopia we're creating here,
I do think it's really cool from my perspective of buying for the long term.
Absolutely.
We are looking for more diverse technology. I think maybe the confusion is because I think I had only mentioned the technology diversity in what the RFP had been seeking, which admittedly it's not the most exciting new technology, but it is helpful for our portfolio.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Vice Chair Tyson, again.
I'm providing unasked for help with your negotiations. I just did on terms of the term, and your answer to Director Mohan, is it ever in our interest to serve as an alternate financing source? if the developers are eager but are having trouble getting financing and look at our cash position, granted that could add some risk, but I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, I think that's a structure that the structure would be attractive under the Inflation Reduction Act, where we as a public entity could perhaps monetize some of the production tax credit or the investment tax credit. Most of these projects, though, they get built and financed with tax equity partners that have a tax credit appetite, which we don't have since we're tax exempt. So that's what makes these projects attractive, is that they can monetize them in that way. But that aside, if we to hand over 138 million or two, we'd have to talk to Amrit first, but that would be a different model than what we're used to. We are exploring that through CC Power to see if there's an opportunity for a group of CCAs to come together, share the risk in actually developing and owning a project.
Okay. All right. I promise my next suggestion will be a good one, whatever it is.
Amrit might say, nice try. But that idea is great, Monica. That's, I know we have talked about that in the past. Okay, other questions, comments? Anything online? Open for public comment?
No hands raised, Chair.
Okay, close public comment. And for this one, I believe Vice Chair wants to make the motion.
Well, I do. Yes, I move that we do make the action in number 4, authorize the Chief Executive Officer as stated here.
And second by?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, you have to do the vote, Andrea.
Yes, thank you. Chair Walia?
Aye.
Vice Chair Tyson?
Yes.
Director Scozola?
Aye.
Mohan?
Aye.
Daly?
Aye.
Rennie?
Aye.
Mekachek?
Aye.
Klein?
Aye.
Hilton?
Aye.
Thank you. That motion carries.
Okay, can someone let Director Lee know before I start with item number 5? Okay, you text. Okay, so Director Lee will be here in a moment, and we are going to, thank you so much, Britta.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's really exciting to have something in our county finally happening.
Yeah.
Finally. Okay, I'm stalling for time as you, giving him time to walk up, as you all know. So item number 5, which is 2023 community-wide greenhouse gas emissions update, and this item is for discussion. And we have our Director of Decarbonization Programs and Policy, Justin Zagunis. This is very exciting to see what we all do and what impact we are making. So,
Yes.
Justin, floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Can you hear me all right? Okay. Yes, so good evening. I know we have the anchor position here tonight, so we have a fairly short item, but an important one. It's our annual GHG emissions update for the region, and this is an info-only item. There's no action required. You're just receiving this report. So to kick us off, big takeaway is we're 27% below our baseline year of 2015. And as always, we have the stacked bars here in the graph showing the various sectors that we track. I'll call out a couple of them in a moment, but I will direct your attention to the dashed line in 2020, just to note that that was the year of the main COVID impact, although we did see some lingering effects, and so it kind of rebounded over the following few years. So that's kind of the reason for the somewhat strange shape that you see here. So the key drivers in this 27% reduction really are lower electricity emissions and transportation emissions. And so I'll dig into each of those in a second here. The first, electricity emissions, is the biggest reduction. And as you can see, when SVCE was formed, took a big bite out of that from 2015, moving on down to the right. And since then, they've been fairly low with some variation. I think the biggest thing to call out that we saw from 2022 to 2023 is actually that the PG&E and direct access average emissions factors decreased quite significantly. And I think this is tied to the kind of overall trend that we're seeing, that the grid is getting cleaner overall. It's something we've talked about here in a variety of presentations and things you've heard from us. So that's all sort of consistent. And I will flag, technically these are the electricity numbers are draft numbers because the board has not formally approved the PCL attestation. So we don't think they're going to change from what we're presenting here, but that has not yet happened. The other big factor was transportation. And this one I think is really interesting, so I want to spend a moment on it. So the emissions from these sectors were 5% below 2015, baseline year, in 2023. This was despite a 13% increase in vehicle miles traveled. And so those are, of course, kind of contrary directions, but the reason for this is even with that increase in vehicle travel, the vehicle efficiencies increased, so fuel mileage got better and better, and EV adoption continued to grow, especially in our region, right? We have fairly aggressive EV ownership. And so those two trends really were able to take a 13% increase in VMT, in vehicle miles traveled, and turn that into a 5% emissions decrease, which is really, I think, encouraging and impressive. It's very good. So stepping back again to kind of look at the whole picture, normally this is where the GHG inventory would have ended in years past, but this year I wanted to add a little bit more context and kind of a connection back to some programs stuff based on questions that you all have asked in the past on some other presentations that I've done over this last year. So we're at 27% decrease here in 2023, but as you may note on the table to the right, we have a 2025 target of 40% below our baseline year, which means we're 13% away from that. I don't expect that we're going to hit that in 2 years because that's quite a ways away from where we are now. And I think that's kind of something we probably anticipated when we set these goals. We set them very aggressively in a linear way where we said, here we are in 2015, here's where we're trying to get in 2045 or 2050. We're trying to get all the way down to zero, and we sort of drew a line between those points. I think when we think about technology adoption, we know that it's not always linear. It's maybe looks more like the kind of S-curve shape where you have different phases of growth and acceptance of these different technologies. And so I'll kind of dig into that a little more in a second. So what does this 13% mean? I know it's hard to conceptualize a little bit. So we tried to put it in terms of the number of devices it would take to, what would we need to electrify to go from where we are today to get to 40%? And so you can see here 63,000 vehicles electrified. So that's replacing gas vehicles with electric vehicles. 34,000 water heaters, 24,000 space heaters, you see. This is one scenario. You could electrify more vehicles and fewer water heaters, right? You can kind of play with the numbers in some way, but this gives you a sense of what this could look like. How does that compare to our programs today? So this is the cumulative impact of all of the programs that we have on the books. So this is sort of a forecast of everything that we think we're doing, everything that is related directly to these programs. So this doesn't include some of our EV charging programs, even though we know that that will lead to more vehicle adoption. It doesn't include the Go Electric Advisor, our concierge service. So there's other things we're doing beyond this, but the ones that are most relevant I've listed here. You can see it gets us roughly 1/10 of the way. But that's an important 1/10, right? And so, these are programs we're running because they are early adoption tests and demonstrations, and we are trying to assess, where is the market today? How do we get people comfortable? What are the technologies that we want to be promoting? How do we reduce costs? What are barriers that we can find in systems like permitting or the workforce? And so that's all stuff we're doing with our work today. And that's necessary because even though it kind of starts small here, as we look forward, we think it is what will enable us to kind of bend this upward. So the question that we asked was, all right, if we're not going to get there in 2025, when might we get to kind of that equivalent number of devices electrified? And that looks like, to us, based on our current forecast, 2030. And this is largely driven by the back-mid policies that we've talked about before. When you start doing tens and tens of thousands of replacements every year, you do get to those numbers fairly quickly. Statewide rules and the EV car sale rules. And so when you look at this, you can sort of see that it does start to bend up. I think, It's important though to know that this will only happen and this will only succeed for our customers if we are building the support ecosystem, the scaffolding, we have the pieces in place to continue to help. So if we haven't removed enough friction, then even policies like this won't go forward or won't succeed. And so that's kind of an important part of what we're doing and what we're looking at. But it really is the policies that will help us drive this uptick. So with that, I will just leave you with the thought that, I think we've come a long way in terms of spinning up more and more of our programs, more efforts. We are seeing them start to scale up, and we're continuing to push for that. But to get to that next order of magnitude, it is market transformation. It is policy and successful policy and supporting that successful policy. And so that's what we're focused on. The path isn't entirely clear or easy, we know, but I think together we're seeing that, and we're already seeing, and we're seeing it in the 2030 timeframe, that these efforts that we've been talking about, that we've been supporting, are going to start bending up the adoption curve and start bending down the carbon curve. So with that, I think I don't have any more content, and we can have any questions.
Thank you, Justin. Very well put. A lot of information and summarized, so beautifully presented. Well, it's good to see we are making progress. As you said, it may be only 1/10, but it's an important 1/10. So that's great. Question, Director Mekachek.
Thank you. We're going in the right direction, and I think it's difficult to get there. We've got some pretty aggressive goals. And I'm wondering, if you look at PG&E and you look at the gas side and the electricity side, we're looking at basically replacing natural gas with electricity, but at the same time we want to have buildings more efficient. So we want to see a net reduction. I'm just curious if, and you don't have to answer it now, but it seems to me that if we could see a reduction in natural gas usage, that would be a good thing. And on the EV adoption, I remember a few years ago when I got my first EV, I was like the only one on the road. And now they're everywhere. They're like around here. They're all over. And I think that's a good thing, So anyways, well done. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And I'll just say, I think you're right. Gas efficiency can play a part in this. I think as we think about deep decarbonization and kind of, eventually we want to be pruning the gas systems in neighborhoods so that we're kind of reducing just the overall system of that and leakage and all these other elements. Efficiency won't be enough, and so that's certainly why we've oriented towards the fuel switching, which I know you're also in support of. It's just it's probably a both, and certainly for industries where it's going to be really hard to electrify, efficiency is going to be play a super important role.
Okay, Director Klein and then Director Rennie.
Thank you very much, and I'll second. This is very interesting and exciting from, how we're meeting our goals. Do we have this data in comparison to other CCAs, other power brokers from a regional standpoint, or power delivery systems from a regional standpoint, just to see how we're comparing? I know we have our goals, but how they're doing? Do we have that data that?
Which portions of the data, like the electricity emissions piece, or the whole sector?
That as well as kind of where they are from reductions, because they're all, all the CCAs are trying to do similar efforts, and with differing levels of success. Are there some that are far better, far worse, and are there, let's say, goals or are there things to be learned from those that are ahead of the curve?
Yeah, interesting question. We certainly share information across CCAs, so I think if there are others that are doing certain things better, we have no shame in trying to steal from them and pulling that. We also try to share the things we're doing well with the other groups. I think it's an interesting question. I'll have to think about how we might pull together some sort of comparison. It's, every CCA, and part of the value of CCAs, of course, is the local kind of control and the local differences. And so different CCAs have very different customer bases, have very different challenges in some ways. Some of them even look at different things in terms of determining what success is, what the mission is, what the objectives are. And so that makes it a little bit more challenging to do any kind of apples to apples comparison. But it's an interesting thought.
And then you talk about go
I
ahead.
was just going to say,
Sorry.
I do know that one of our very active community members does a study for of all the CCAs and their impacts on greenhouse gas emissions and their rates. And I know he makes that available to the board. I mean, I'm talking, of course, of Bruce Carney. So he does that assessment every year. I'm sure you've seen it as well. So he pulls the information straight from the power content labels for each of the CCAs after they've been published. I'm assuming he's going to do it for 2023, but we can certainly work with him or even just look to do something similar as well. But you're only seeing one piece of it, as Justin has mentioned. There's more nuance to it. There's a lot behind what we're doing on programs and policies that you're not seeing in those power content labels that we're showing. And so that's just one aspect of the comparison.
And then going on to transportation, which we've seen a reduction on. I'm trying to get a better idea on how that's measured from a regional standpoint, because we're talking about SVCE impact, but that's not all the cities in the county. And so to me, it's and then kind of leading on to that, we have lots of programs that we're talking about and either have already started or looking to start as far as additional EV charging stations, but electric bikes and a few other things that we've talked about in the past. That conceivably works into that transportation portion, but how is that seen countywide or for the member cities? So from our portion of that.
Mm-hmm. So I think a couple questions in there that are good ones. I'll say, in terms of what you're seeing from direct program impacts in the emissions, it's pretty small today, right? I mean, the numbers that I showed you are our forecasted impacts for the programs that we're still ramping up and still rolling out. And so I think looking in there for the direct piece is going to be hard. I'm going to punt the other part of your question to Rebecca, because I think she can talk about where we pull. I think part of your question was like, where are we getting the transportation numbers from to inform this? Because we are reporting the sector wide, right?
Correct.
Which means market impacts, just all kinds of trends within the sector, not just SVCE direct impacts.
Okay.
Happy to speak to that question. So there are a couple of kind of different components of the transportation sector, as you saw on the stack bar chart. There is non-commercial on-road, commercial on-road, and off-road. So for our on-road data, we get the VMT, vehicle miles traveled, data from the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. So they have their own kind of Plan Bay Area model that they run. It's kind of an origin destination VMT model that can kind of predict between different cities, who's traveling into the city, out of the city, and then we have some formulas to kind of determine what that means for VMT within SVCE territory. And then as for vehicle efficiency, we get all of that data from CARB, the California Air Resources Board. They have their own database called EMFAC, EMFAC. So this is where we pull kind of information on populations of different types of passenger vehicles, trucks, any sort of commercial vehicles, as well as the fuel that they run on and their efficiency. So combining all of that, that's how we develop the on-road emissions, part of the emissions inventory. One interesting thing is since COVID started, shelter in place, we've also had to kind of adjust the model numbers using real data. So we do that using a database from Caltrans. So looking at real kind of highway VMT happening pre-COVID versus post-COVID, and then adjusting the MTC model outputs using those percentages.
Okay, I appreciate that. My only question is how it's broken to so SVCE's component of that, and I understand electrification from a regional standpoint, but you talk about meeting our goals, our 2030, our 2025, 2030 goals. And a large portion of that is still transportation. Are we is SVCE, reducing that, or when we see the reduction, is it only really seen from an MTC standpoint? They're looking at the whole Bay Area, and do they compartmentalize it to, from what you're reporting here, do they compartmentalize it to the jurisdictions of SVCE? Meaning, are we seeing, the SVCE is making a difference in their city specific, or here's South Bay, and we'll never see that direct component. I understand VMT is kind of regional based, but you have, non-member cities, San Jose coming into, Mountain View, Cupertino, Sunnyvale. Does, there's a play there that I don't see how it directly affects.
So we we pull this data together, and we have made decisions on how we account for transportation in SVCE territory. So the numbers that we give you are, based on the kind of methodology that we've followed over this time. Here is what the portion of all of those are just in SVCE service territory. So all of our communities. The goals that we set, when I say we, I do mean the we of the community of SVCE. And that's when we set them back in 2018, we said, hey, we're going to set these goals. They're not just, sort of scope 1 SVCE controlled emissions only, because that would really just be the electricity sector. But actually, we have an interest in kind of guiding and helping the region achieve these goals. And so that's why it is a little difficult to look at a goal and say, are we achieving it? It's like, well, we're helping, and we're trying to contribute towards this, but it certainly should reflect market trends as well, and it does. And over time, how does that change? So it is a sort of nuanced question. I think if you want to get in, or kind of understand more about the decisions we've made in terms of picking which emissions belong, or how do we ratio a trip that starts in San Jose and ends in Sunnyvale or something like that, we'd be happy to talk with you about it.
Okay, and I have full trust that it's just in what you're doing. I just wanted to make sure that was captured, and it is member agency, however you're doing that breakdown versus, here's the region and it goes down and we're never seeing, or we're at least seeing how we meet our goals. And I understand it's ratios, and VMT has problems in certain cases, but all that together is very useful. So no, I appreciate that, and wanting to see, ultimately, hopefully all of our programs are having direct impact on, transportation, electrification, decarbonization, but specifically transportation continues to be the highest source of greenhouse gases in the region. And so that to me is always it's like the faster we can reduce that, the better it is for everyone. So thank you very much. Thanks for allowing me to go on and on.
Okay, thank you, Director Klein. And Director Rennie, we will hold your comment for later. Thank you for offering that. Director Lee, your question?
Yes, thank you. So looking at the chart you showed earlier, comparing the different area that has been changing throughout the last few years since 2015, the one area, I don't recall you mentioned earlier, maybe I missed it, is the light blue. This seems to be the one that has decreased the most from previous years to this year in 2023, which is called, I believe, off-road is the label. So I just want to check, is that a fuel switching you're talking about, or is this something else when you say off-road?
So you're in slide 3?
Yes. Yes, that's one, right? Yeah. So if you look at the light blue, seems to account for most of the reduction from my understanding, looking at that chart.
So most of the reduction from 2015 is in the green areas, right? Is the electricity emissions reductions.
No, sure. I'm just saying from 22 to 23.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, the more local one. Yeah, so there were a couple reductions. There was some electricity emissions reduction, but yes, you're right that the light blue also had some reduction. So you want to speak to the?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Come on, okay.
It was the chart before this, I think, yeah?
Right, it's the full stack bar chart.
Right.
Right, so the light blue at the bottom of that big blue stacked bar chart is the off-road emissions. The one thing that we wanted to flag here was there's an update to the methodology on how we calculate off-road emissions. This is particularly switching from CARB's off-road 2007 model to their 2021 model. So it's still, developed by the CARB. It's all based on updated assumptions and information in terms of, updated efficiency of equipment, populations of equipment in the county, any new policies that are now in effect or will be in effect. So really, it's a methodology update from off-road 2007 to off-road 2021.
I don't know if he's finished yet. Are you,
Yeah,
more
go ahead,
questions?
please.
Okay, Director Daly, go ahead.
I'm just curious if the methodology change reflects the shift from two-stroke to four-stroke motors in off-road vehicles that occurred in that time period. If CARB was previously using 07 models as a benchmark, the newer models are much more efficient because of the shift from two-stroke to four-stroke. So I think it looks like that reduction is simply just a change in methodology and not a real reduction.
So
Is that?
no, I would categorize it like this. I would say it is a model update, right? Which there's always some question of like, okay, is it real world changes or is it just a methodology question? I think it's the way I'm viewing this is, they didn't update their model until this year, and that's when we made this change, which means that over that time it was changing. Like reality was changing. They were switching the types of motors that were being used. There was different off-road bikes and vehicles. Like everything that's in the sector was changing, but it didn't get reflected until 2023. And so it looks more like this discontinuity because we've been using the old model this whole time. But now that we've updated it, it's probably in reality like it's been getting smaller and smaller over these years. It's just now it's actually being reflected because this is when the update has been made. And so the model gets updated based on the real world data and input that CARB gets in terms of what equipment is out there, how efficient is that. So we think it does reflect reality.
Okay, sounds good. I'm going to ask you a completely different question, not based on these bar charts. So we are seeing reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. And over the course of the last few years specifically, we are also seeing a lot more data centers coming up because of the technology changes happening. There's more AI work happening. So more electricity usage, and I'm not even talking of fuel switching or anything in buildings, but just more electricity usage because of the heavy consumption by data centers. So how have we been effective in reducing the greenhouse gas emissions in spite of this increase in electricity usage? And would you say the trend would continue because the increase in data centers, the consumption for electricity there is increasing dramatically?
I may pass to Monica the part of the question about kind of load growth forecast and what that means for how we're serving that load with clean electricity. I will say that you've hit on something that is really interesting, though. The forecast that we do sort of assumes no new building stock coming in or new, gas consumption in buildings or anything like that. And of course, we know that's not true. There are new housing stocks coming in. So I do want to call out that, we know that there have been a lot of new properties built over this span that we're looking at here that are not really showing up in this because they have been electric and because we've been serving them with cleaner electricity. So I think that's actually a positive that sort of doesn't show up well when you're just focused on reducing the emission stack because you've sort of avoided putting new things into the emission stack. But in terms of load, in terms of the data centers, I'm going to pass that to Monica.
Yeah, the housing stock is one thing, but the scale would be, the magnitude would be very different for data centers. And that's why I specifically was thinking about that.
Yeah, so if the question is whether we're incorporating potential impacts of data centers and AI centers into our load forecast and what that would do to emissions, it's something that I think the state as a whole has been grappling. And with in terms of what's really going to come, right? Because if we over forecast and then build clean resources to meet that forecast, we could find ourselves with too many resources, right? But so we have, it's an interesting kind of dilemma where we find ourselves today. I can say that in our service territory, specifically, we have not seen an indication of a huge amount of data centers coming into our service territory. I think one of the ways that we can, that's kind of our theory. And it's based on really kind of the cost of electricity in our service territory, with the whole, the entire system average rate being quite high. The places that have attracted a lot of data centers are places like the city of Santa Clara, because they have really low rates and they have space available for it. But what we have started to do is, as we connect with our member agencies, we're starting to ask them, are you seeing large applications for data centers or AI type centers in your service, in your city? If you are seeing them, we'd like to figure out a way where we can incorporate that into our own kind of planning and load forecasting. But we don't have a system in place to do that kind of a systematic way. So it's really a conversation with your staffs, and we're starting to do that and figure out how to create those channels. But my general sense is that it's not going to, even though we're Silicon Valley, it's not likely going to be, the growth won't happen here because of the expense of moving here from a space-wise, and the expense of electricity, and the difficulty in connecting these projects to the PG&E system right now. So San Jose, though, we know is attracting a big data center, and they're going to be serving it directly, including distribution service. So.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. Okay, let's open for public comment.
Yes, Chair, we have one speaker with their hand raised, Bruce Carney.
Okay, wonderful. Welcome, Mr. Carney. You were just, somebody mentioned you. Our CEO mentioned you a few minutes ago.
Thank you very much. So I'd like to thank CEO Padilla for mentioning me, and for the document that I have in the past produced called How Green, How Cheap, that compares the renewable energy content and the price of various CCAs, electricity versus PG&E. I will probably get around to that after November 5th. I've been spending most of my time working on election issues rather than energy issues. But thank you for reminding me that I have another thing that I should be working on. And CEO Padilla, thank you for sharing the news about your nephew's wonderful field goal kick to earn $100,000 for him and $600,000 for charities. That was a wonderful thing to receive. One thing that you might want to be aware of is the work of a nonprofit called Cultura that put a bill into the legislature this year that was passed but not signed to focus EV incentives on automobile owners who drive a lot. For example, people who live in Morgan Hill or Gilroy and commute to Palo Alto or Mountain View. Right now, EV incentives are largely focused on relatively wealthy people who live in the job centers, not on the relatively poor people who live far away. And Cultura's proposal would have really improved the efficiency of those incentives in getting cars off the gas cars off the road that went 30,000 miles a year, as opposed to getting gas cars off the road that went 3,000 miles a year. So I hope that all of the directors and SVCE staff will be supportive of Cultura's proposal when they come back to the legislature in February of next year. Along that line, one thing SVCE could do is to provide to its board information on the registration of EVs and plug-in hybrids city by city, perhaps to create a competition between Sunnyvale and Monte Sereno and Palo Alto and Los Gatos and Mountain View, to see which city can get to 50% new EV registrations first. Because even though the EVs in those cities may not be driving the farthest, it would be nice to be able to have credit or claim credit for being the most EV-centric city in Silicon Valley. Anyway, thanks for the opportunity to chime in, and thanks for all the hard work you're doing.
Thank you so much, Mr. Carney. Always good to hear from you, and thank you for doing all the wonderful work you do. With that, any other member of the public?
No additional hands raised.
Okay, I close the public comment period, bring it back to the board, and I'm going to start with Director Rennie first. Thank you for your patience.
Yeah, no, I wanted to share an experience. So I finished changing out my water heater last week, so now we only need 33,999 more. But the interesting thing is, one of the things we've been thinking about for a number of years is we need to educate the workforce on how to put these things in. And I kind of set it up. I had the electrical circuit ran. I went and got the permit. I went to Home Depot. I bought the water heater. I put it in my garage. And then I called my contractor friend. I said, can you send your plumber over to put this in? And, you know, he's not on any special trained list or anything. So he came over. We opened the box. He looked at, you know, the manual for a half hour. Said, okay, I wrote the things he needed. He came back the next day with everything and really was able to put it in without a problem. And it was decently complicated because you've got to install some kind of compressed container next to it. You got to put in a condensed pump and run a condensed line. And so it wasn't that simple, and it, you know, was clearly different than a regular water heater, but he didn't seem to have any problem doing it. So it encourages me that these are becoming prevalent enough that, you know, a lot of the plumbers probably have some experience with it, because it took two guys a day, and then they had to come back the next day. During the day, they were able to turn the hot water on, but they had to come back the next day, I think, to finish, you know, probably running the condenser line and stuff like that. But it took them a day and a half to do that, but they seem to competently put it all together. So that's really what I wanted to share, is I feel like we're getting to the point that this can really start running. You know, you can just call probably a lot of people be able to do this job.
Thank you. Other comments? Director Daley?
I actually think the cost of money has a lot to do with the shape of the graph that we've seen for the last few years and what we can hope an improvement in the forecast. Because if you look at, you know, 805 new commercial buildings coming online, we haven't entitled a single commercial building in Los Altos in the last 2 years. There's not much commercial construction. And then, of course, a lot of people pay for electrification in their home by refinancing. And so when you see the refinancing start to go up as the cost of money comes down, we'll see electrification going up again, because it's been flat since the Berkeley decision, and most of our jurisdictions have decided to suspend enforcement of their REACH codes. So I do think that the cost of money is at least a partial explanation for the missing reductions that we would have hoped to see, and a harbinger of good things for the next couple years.
Thank you. In fact, I would like to add something there. The work that we have been doing at SVCE the last couple of years, SVCE engaging with each of the cities, is going to result in a lot more newer homes or big remodels where people who believe in climate change are going through changes in their homes or a brand new home, but the city limitations, I speak for my city for sure, with the permitting process and the lack of information there to the extent that is needed, when that was not available, a resident just wants to move forward with building their home. Some of you have heard this from me quite a few times. Now, with the information, the communication between Team SVCE and, say, my city, streamlining the permitting process that we have been working on this year, I know for a fact there are residents who would be able to take advantage of that because they want to get their home built quickly. And if this is something they're not going to get support from the city because of lack of resources, they will move forward. But if they get the support, which is SVCE providing that support in each city, we will get that benefit. And that's where all the teamwork collaborating with all the cities is going to come forward. And each city is unique. That's specifically for my city. Other comments? Seeing, oh, okay.
Our public comment from Bruce Carney, he suggested that we get some healthy competition, and he mentioned Monte Sereno, and we're in. So if you can get some data, that'd be great.
Okay. Other comments? If not, again, we were so ahead of time. No complaints here. This is fabulous. What a wonderful discussion. Essentially, what our mission is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and that's what this last item was a detailed conversation, and I appreciate that from each one of you board members, and thank you so much, Rebecca, and thank you so much, Justin. With that, we come almost toward the end of the meeting, and we are going to go through board member announcements and direction on future agenda items. Any announcements there? Director Makachek?
Yes. Sorry. I know that our CEO is an Oakland A's fan, and it was the end of the Oakland A's playing in Oakland. And I happened to attend that game, and I know Monica was working that day. So what they gave us at the game were these A's souvenir tickets, but everyone got one. But what they didn't, what I got, and I had to go up and get it, was an actual ticket for my seat. So this is the last one. Monica, this is for you. They're both for you. No.
So much. For those of you who know, there are several on the team, on the staff, who are very big A's fans, and we're very sad to see them leave our Bay Area. So thank you. I hope you enjoyed the game.
Okay, I have one announcement, and I'm going to add something else. So firstly, I want to thank SVCE for their presence with their resource table at Saratoga State of the City last weekend. Benna Chang and Kayla Kiefer were there, and they stayed for a few hours, which was just lovely. I know people talked with them, and this is the way SVCE engages with residents and spreads the word. And through the other resource tables, they also know what else is happening, what other ways they can talk to different agencies. Monica was also there. Monica, it was great to see you having stopped by there. It was wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm going to add one more thing. Since the theme this whole evening has been youth-centric, community engagement, and for some reason, football kept on popping up in conversation during this meeting, something very interesting. A Saratoga High School student approached me early this year. He was looking for some opportunities to engage with the community, and one specific request he had of me was if he could intern, amongst other things, that if he could have a summer internship at SVCE. I spoke with Girish, and Girish said we do not take any high school students as interns. So I shared that with the student, and we started chatting. This is where collaboration, and we as council members in our cities, I think we find numerous opportunities to engage residents, and this is a fabulous story. The student kept on coming back to me, and I mentioned to him that we have a nonprofit, again, we were talking of a nonprofit, which is a public access television in my city called KSAR 15. And there are opportunities that we need to engage with the youth, move forward with the new technology, the new ways of engaging with people. Long and short of it is, the student by the name of Tanuj Siripurapu, he kept on coming back to me numerous times, asking for more information, more information. He built a website, got student volunteers, worked with the KSAR station master, And September 27th, they live streamed the Saratoga High School football game for the first time, which was just fascinating. In less than a week, they had more than 1,200 views on YouTube because they had grandparents all across the world who were engaged. The reason I thought of this is somebody is interested in climate change, wants to do something at SVCE, but there are other opportunities for us to engage with them and keep on doing the good work, just like what we heard today from Juliet in engaging with the education fund going to the schools. And that's the most rewarding thing that I find, and I'm sure all my colleagues would agree in the public service. That's the most positive we find. Okay, with that, it's 8. Oh, Director Lee.
One last announcement. October 13th, this Sunday, we're doing our Day on the Bay over in Alviso Marina Park. Please come out. There will be lots of activities, not just for the kids, like pumpkins and singing and dancing and all the good stuff that you get to enjoy what our bay offers. A lot of times people forgot the fact that in Santa Clara County, we actually do abut the bay on the very south part in Alviso. So if you've never been out there, come by. Be very active between 10 to 3, and the weather will not be as hot as you saw this past weekend. So we're very excited about it. It won't rain, so it should be perfect weather. So please come out. Thank you. And I believe SVC might have a presence at the Day on the Bay, as they always do every year, showcasing the great work that we're doing here as well. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Team SVCE, for making the effort every weekend to go to different agencies. With that, it's 8:11 p.m. and the meeting is adjourned.